Good afternoon, Lunaticks, and welcome to Disruption vs. Innovation. This is episode 2, and we are coming to you live from the Foghorn.
Good evening and welcome.
We're trying to count us in here. Welcome to the Lunaticks Live here from the Foghorn Brew House, coming to you from King Street. I'm just getting a bit of technical feedback here, and are we live? Oh, good, great. Welcome everybody to the Lunaticks Live. It is season 3, episode 2, and we're still here. Just.
What do you mean, just? We're here and we're fighting fit and we're having a great time because we're talking about...
Does disruption versus innovation, or is it a codependency relationship? That's the thing I'd like to know.
Yeah, what's the difference between disruption and innovation is the topic tonight. We decided to put this topic forward because as the Lunatic Society, we hear so many hot keywords, and these two get throwing themselves around in front of us. Someone's been called a disruptor, someone's been called an innovator. What's the difference? And let's get to the depths of what that means.
And from your perspective, what do you think is a disruptor?
Oh, well, thanks for asking, Greg. Well, to be honest, I actually didn't know. So I asked the Oracle of Knowledge. And
Wikipedia or the Oxford Dictionary?
The Oxford Dictionary.
Oh, very good, thank you.
And in short, a disruptor, Greg, is in the digital technology sphere, disruption means you change the status quo, right? Whereas in innovation, you're creating a tool that everyone's going to want to buy and use. So this microphone, for example, is an innovation, but its ability and its purpose is actually a disruption to society.
Because, however, if I get a loudhailer, I can disrupt the power balance, can't I?
Absolutely.
I can outspeak the other person.
Absolutely. So, you know, like if you were a preacher at church back in the day before microphones, you'd yell and scream and you do the whole thing to capture everyone's attention. Now we have microphones, it's even louder.
And is that exciting for you?
I think the whole thing, I think analysing our society about who's doing what and what that means to society is an exciting thing. That's why we're here, and that's why we have some amazing people to talk to tonight.
Okay. Well, look, before we get underway with that, we'd like to say a great big shout out to our sponsors, the University of Newcastle Business Centre, and also we're talking about the Business Centre. We're also taking the City of Newcastle as a part of. We've got a great, fabulous crew here from Bar TV. We have the Production Hub as well, and Pitch Perfect Media. But who do we have as our guest tonight talking about this subject?
We have 2 speakers tonight, and they come from diverse backgrounds. So first up, leading the way with all things technological. I had a better word in mind, but it went funny. Is Peter Ahul, if I pronounce that correctly. Sorry, Pete. Peter is... We're so privileged to have him here this evening. Peter was working at the Adelaide City Council and created some world-first innovation. He is number 6 on the Chief Innovation Officer 50 list, which is astounding. And he'll be speaking with us about smart cities and innovation and what he's done in his career.
And I guess in many ways he was both an innovator, but he was also a disruptor with some of the things he did.
Well, we'll soon find out.
Which was done. And then our other guest speaker is going to be Christopher Saunders, who has worked as a social change initiator for more than 20 years. He's currently lecturing at the University of Newcastle for the entrepreneurship program. but he was more importantly the general manager for Renew Newcastle. And I think Chris has a particularly perspective on disruption versus innovation and the tension that exists there. So I think we're looking forward to having those speakers. But now we actually have Chad Ramage, who's going to be doing our tech news.
Afternoon, Lunaticks. So tonight I was going to have a chat to you about last episode when we went through the Samsung launch and all of the fantastic new products that were going to be released. Absolute kiss of death. The Samsung Fold that was meant to be released this week has got its hands out to reviewers, and pretty much the majority of those Fold devices have actually broken. So you can jump online to your favourite social media platforms and have a look for Foldgate. So the main issue that has come up with them, when you buy a phone or a watch or any new electrical kind of device, it comes with that little plastic screen that you just peel off and then it's all shiny, new, fantastic, and you're away. That screen protector component on this new device is actually part of the screen. So as these reviewers were trying to pull the screen protector off, the screen was completely dying. So aside from that, after even slight use and pocket wear, the hinge in the middle of the Fold product was starting to bulge and then entirely wipe out the screens as well. So it's been that much of an issue that they've delayed the launch completely, and it hasn't actually been rescheduled yet. So keep that $2,800 in your pocket if you were thinking about it, and maybe wait to check out the Huawei Mate X, which actually has a screen on the outside as a part of the Fold, but no promises that won't cause the exact same issue. So on from Foldgate, I'm going to introduce to you tonight Kalia from the Hunter Innovation Festival Coordinator. And yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Hunter Innovation Festival and what's coming up?
Perfect, thank you very much. I'm really excited to tell you all about the Hunter Innovation Festival, which kicks off on Monday the 6th of May, so only a few days away. The 2019 festival is bigger than ever. It's been running for about 11 years, and this program is absolutely the biggest. So it's 12 days. It goes from 6th to the 17th of May, and I counted this morning and we've got 46 events happening in the region, which is really, really exciting. The events range from workshops, speaker events, interactive sessions. There's some performances, light installations, speaker events and more. So all of these events highlight innovation across a range of different industries across the Hunter.
So this sounds like it's going to be a really great opportunity for not only people from Hunter and Newcastle, but even people to travel and to do some networking and connecting at these events.
It surely is. With so many events and activities, there are so many opportunities to network. But more than just networking, I suppose, in that normal sense, it's a great opportunity for people to connect with other people, but also with new ideas. It's a really good opportunity as well to learn about all the different things that are happening within our region and to celebrate the innovation that's happening in our backyard, which is really, really exciting. But as well as connecting, we want people to get inspired. So whether you're coming across innovation for the first time, we want you to be inspired by the ideas that are happening. Whether you've got an idea and ready to take the next step, we're hoping that the festival provides you with the opportunity to get inspired.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And I know I'm definitely keen to have a look at the event at Newcastle Library around building accessible online platforms, and it's a very much a Lego themed event around the building blocks of accessibility and how you can make those online areas even better. So I shall throw back over to you, Olivia and Greg.
Thanks, Chad, and it sounds fantastic, the festival. And of course, this is an opportunity for us to say the Lunaticks Live is collaborating with the City of Newcastle as part of this, one of our talks on the May 15, which is going to be Data is the New Oil. And our keynote speaker is going to be Andrew Inwood from Core Data. And he's going to be exploring the big picture around data, big data, and how we use it. He's been doing some very interesting work in how people actually can be motivated to do different things. It's called the nudge effect. So that's coming up on May 15 as part of the Hunter Innovation Festival. So we're really looking forward to that. So Olivia, I think we're going to cut to an ad now, and then we're coming back and be introducing our two panellists or two speakers shortly after that.
Welcome to the Business Centre. My name's Paulina Mangano and I'm one of the business advisors here at the Business Centre. We've been doing what we do for over 34 years, and what we do is help business. Whether you're thinking of starting a business, you like to scale up, you like to go into a different direction, we're here to help. The first thing that we focus on is asking you, what is it that you want? We work out where you're at and then we help you get there. So we've got all of the tools that you need, and more importantly, we can sit with you and work out which tools are going to work best specifically for you. So there's no general template, there's no this is what you do for every business, because I think, as we all know, there's no one fit. So we work out what works for you and we're there to guide you along the way. So we'd love to see you at the Business Centre. We can help you with your business. We're not for profit, so you're our focus, and looking forward to seeing you. Thanks very much.
I'm majoring in leadership and management, and I've got a real focus on social innovation, as there's a push for businesses to be socially responsible. So 3 years ago I started a business called Eat Your Water. It's a surf brand that's come out of Newcastle, and we now sell essentially worldwide. I started it more so as a platform I could use to preach a sort of social conscious about marine conservation, thinking outside of just about profit. It's about thinking about the environment, people around you. There's a perception that starting a business is really difficult, but your end's resources and support really make it so much easier. Students from different ranges of backgrounds, and I guess bouncing those ideas off one another, it really helps when you collaborate. It just allows that process to be so much easier.
Good evening and welcome back to Lunaticks Live here at the Foghorn Brewhouse on King Street, Newcastle. Thanks all for joining us this evening. Tonight we're talking about disruption versus innovation. We're streaming live on Twitter, and we hope to ask your Twitter questions at the end of the evening. So please tweet with the hashtag Lunaticks Live, and we'll collate all those for the final section. Right now we're speaking with Peter All, who is the Chief Innovation Officer, who was the Chief Innovation Officer at City of Adelaide and is now at the Central Coast Council, looking to do some more innovation in the technical sphere. He's sixth listed on the CIO 50 list, and it was nominated by his peers as CIO of the Year in 2017. Peter, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Peter, clearly the acknowledgement of Chief Information Officer. I'm trying to remember when the first time I started to hear that term. Can you remember when
it was, I guess it was almost a coming of age in our industry, where the traditional IT managers started to play a bit more of an influential role across the organisation. So certainly I remember the time that sort of transition occurred.
So the recognition in 2017, Information Officer of the Year, that was for your work with Adelaide City, and a pretty significant innovation, I guess. Yeah,
look, that was really quite a humbling experience. I'm a country boy. I was actually born in the southeast of South Australia, and my mum Bless her soul, she passed away when I was 11. She wanted me to be a wool classer because we grew up on a farm. She thought that was the pinnacle that I would get to in my career. So it was very humbling to actually get nominated, nationally for that award. Almost pinch myself daily that actually occurred.
Yeah. So, a bit of your background. You had a sort of progression through IT and technology, and it started actually with in local government, effectively.
I actually started my working life as an opal miner, interestingly. Blowing stuff up in Cooper in the middle of Australia was a
Why'd
bit
you
of
give
fun.
that away?
I don't know. It just seemed like technology was just the lure that sort of drew me to it. So, but certainly, look, I spent a lot of time in the hospitality industry, really looking after customer service, not dissimilar to where we are tonight. And I guess that's something that I've taken through my career, making sure whatever innovation occurs has really got a human part to it and making sure it actually solves real life problems. So 7 years with the hospitality industry, with the Stanford chain, and then local and state government over the majority of my career since then.
Peter, you're a part of something quite groundbreaking over in Adelaide, which is called the 10 Gigabit Adelaide. It's a world first project. Can you give us a bit of insight about it?
Yeah, sure. Look, I guess, being in Adelaide at the time and having young children, Adelaide was going through an economic renaissance and really was at a cliff's edge when it came to their economic prospects. So really looking at ways that we could transform the economy of Adelaide using technology as the enabler. So Adelaide had quite an issue around its location being isolated. So how could we use technology infrastructure to solve that problem? So I spent about 3 months out in the streets talking to businesses and really trying to understand what were their key problems. And what came out was businesses were saying, I can see when kids are getting home from school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going home to do their homework. No, of course they're not. They go home and fire up Netflix and Stan and YouTube and alike. And what was happening was businesses that were effectively trying to get to a cloud service were in competition with domestic internet traffic to get to their cloud service. So I guess the essence of 10 Gigabit Adelaide was really looking at ways that we could get as much traffic off the internet and onto private fibre links. So the project came about by looking at ways that we could connect the entire city together. So the scope of the project was 3,500 businesses through the city. And we really looked at price point as a point of difference for the city as well. So imagine an ecosystem of businesses connected together through the city, 3,500 businesses, networked together, being able to access that sort of connectivity reliably and cost effectively, being able to think differently about how they solve problems, and it brought companies like Technicolor to Adelaide or Boeing and, those sorts of companies. The health industry was very interested in these disruptions. But also having this marketing spin to it as well. We did some analysis and we worked out when Adelaide hit 500 of the 3,500 businesses that were in scope of the project, they'll be twice as fast as Seoul, which is considered one of the fastest cities in the world. So how do we really, reposition Adelaide's prospect, not just economically, but through some clever marketing and really repositioning its position internationally.
But I might just ask you to bring the microphone, just we'll stop some of that feedback because they're trying to get all those beautiful words down and hear you loud and clear. So the actual challenge really was, in effect, there was a disruption to the current network. That is people's demand for those services that they assumed they could just get access straight away. But it was starting to create limitations at other parts of the network. It's like a pipeline. So what was the response from businesses, or particularly from your bosses, trying to convince them to come on board with the program?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. Particularly working in governments that are incredibly risk adverse and, really being a world first project and something that when you go to write a business case, it's very difficult to sort of find another place in the world that it's done something similar. So I guess we spent a lot of time, working really closely with the administration and working closely with our elected members to ensure that they understood that this was actually solving a problem. This wasn't just a technology for the sake of it. It was actually solving a real life problem and making that connection between what their people were telling them and what this technology would do with them was really important part of that. That's probably glossing over the effort that went into it. It was a 3-year project to get over the line. So, but really this infrastructure will last for many generations.
So we're all aware of the structures around local council or local government. it's pretty well standard across the nation. You have elected officials, and then you have the people who implement the programs, the public servants. The real resistance points, were they among the elected officials or were they among your colleagues?
Neither. We put the effort in to ensure that we kept all of those people abreast of the impact that this was going to have. So, to be honest, a lot of the resistance come from some of the industries that were being disrupted. We were changing the price point of connectivity in Adelaide quite dramatically. Like, our first customer went from paying about $9,000 a month for a 500 megabit per second business grade service to $399. So when you're looking at those sorts of differentiators in price, it's very easy to sort of pull a business case together to see the impact that's going to have on attraction. But there's a market there that people are actually making that margin. So really the pressure actually came from the outside.
You spoke about this network enabling businesses to grow and enabling the health system on Boeing and other kind of large enterprises to come along. Did you know it was going to take Adelaide to that next step for larger services? Or was it kind of a happy accident?
Oh, of course I knew. No, I absolutely didn't know. I hoped, but I guess one of the things that I often spoke to about with the project team is we've got a really good product and we need to stick to message, and it is solving a problem. So we're really confident that whatever happens, it was going to be a really good outcome for the city. What I ever expected, when I first came up with the idea, people were saying, would you ever need 10 gigabits per second? And, it's almost those famous quotes that we all know from some really famous people across the world. But, I think companies like Boeing have ordered 3 10 gigabit per second services. So never in my wildest dreams did I think it would have the impact that it's having.
So from your perspective as a technologist and understanding the lay of the land and the business you've been in, did you ever actually think that the demand for data or for access it so readily was going to be what it has reached now?
Look, absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt. There was never any doubt in my mind, and I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind now that it's not about... I think people are still thinking that data is about technologists and technology companies. It's not. Health sciences, there's so many industries now that are so reliant on moving data very, very quickly. We spoke to a company that does asset auditing on pipe infrastructure in mining sites, and they're using ultrasound now to actually do, pipe audits. The data files for that were just enormous. They were putting them onto hard drives and querying them to each other. I have no doubt that the demand for data is just going to increase. But I think one thing that's really important about this is it's not just about speed. This is about reliability. And that's what 10 Gigabit Adelaide delivered. It was something that was not just about speed, it was about quality. So to make sure if you were doing a robotic operation and someone was downloading Game of Thrones at the same time, it wasn't going to interfere with each other. So it was really about that. No one would download Game of Thrones though.
And of course that was a stage when Australia was one of the culprits among piracy in terms of Game of Thrones, wasn't it?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. I've never even watched it. So.
All right. Oh, you haven't been tarnished. So
not yet.
You have now moved to the Central Coast, and you're looking at shaking things up there. In relation to what you do and your new role at Council on the Central Coast, are you looking for innovation or disruption over there?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I like your, innovation versus disruption, and is technology an innovation or a disruption? But I don't think it's that. I actually think technology is the enabler, and I think it's people that are the disruptors or people that are the innovators. And I think through history you'll see that is the case. It's not steel that's the disruption. It's the people that do something with the steel. So look, absolutely, the Central Coast is such a beautiful location, and it's got, a lot of challenges still. We've got a really high commuting population going to Sydney, but that provides an enormous opportunity as well for us to capture, the 40-odd thousand people that commute to Sydney every day and give them a lifestyle, locally. So there's a huge focus at the moment about, how we could use technology or how we could actually localise industry to capture some of that. It can't be enjoyable for people to commute 2 hours a day to Sydney to go to work. So it would be fantastic for us to capture some of that market locally on the Central Coast in such a beautiful location.
So is that what you and your team are working at? Problem solving, how to keep more people in town rather than commuting?
Oh, look, there's a myriad of things that we're working on, and at its heart, we've just, started to bring together the systems around the amalgamation of our councils. So that's obviously a key enabler for us as well, making sure that the experience for residents across the coast is absolutely paramount. But I like to work outside of my comfort zone, so making sure that we're not losing opportunities, as they arise, making sure that we're not just focusing on a linear sort of path. We're picking up opportunities as they come to the fore. Is a really important part of innovation or disruption, I think. Letting those things go by, and then you're 5 years down the track, as CEO often talks about, we don't want to be 5 years down the track and we realise something that was coming along. We've got to make sure we pick those opportunities up as we go.
Do you think, from your perspective, coming from Adelaide and having grown up in South Australia, South Australian boy, that the perception of change and how you implement change is different to what you're experiencing there on the Central Coast, or here in New South Wales, or? No,
not at all. And we were talking a bit about this earlier. I think it's about how do you unlock the potential in Australians to actually. It's almost like you need to create something that creates a sense of urgency, because when there's something that's urgent, Australians perform incredibly well. So it's almost like we need to incubate that and orchestrate that to actually get that unearthing. So I see very similar passion from people on the coast. I see a similar cohort of people that were similar to Adelaide that want to make change and make it meaningful and actually want to make things better and different. And I think if you can talk to people's sort of inner self or their limbic brain or, parts of themselves that really make that connection to their emotive side, people that have got children, that want their children to have a job, those sorts of things, I think there's not too many people that aren't going to get around stuff that's going to help them solve those problems.
I'd like to ask you, a lot of the people who attend Lunaticks Live, and we've also had some people join us on the panel, and they're beginning in their career, and they're looking at creating and they're looking at innovating, and one of the biggest struggles from my perspective of what I'm seeing is that they've got the idea but they don't quite know how to get it out there, whether it's literally getting the tools built or marketing the product. Do you have any words of wisdom for those innovators and disruptors out there?
Yeah, come and talk to me. Look, we're building teams at the moment. I want to make sure that we get the best and brightest as part of our team. I want people to think outside of the box. But look, I spend a lot of time in universities, doing guest lecturing and design thinking, those sort of methodologies to really explore, the process that you need to go through to actually turn an idea into something that's actually possible. So, my advice to those types of people would be make sure your idea is actually solving a problem, and that's really been at the heart of everything I've tried to do in my career.
So from talking in a really hyper-local perspective,
yeah.
I mean, I'm some very good friends on the Central Coast, conversations I have around some of the major challenges on the Central Coast, and often the perception is that they're fisher folk, and you never trust fisher folk type of thing. They're communities, they're really tight, they're like coal mining communities. And from your perspective, what do you think are the major challenges for the Central Coast to get to where, obviously, your colleagues and yourself are projecting, the community wants to be? What do you mean, honestly?
I think there's an education process around what's possible and really unearthing some of that information so people can start to see what we can see quite clearly. Look, it's I'm a country boy from a 10,000 acre property in the middle of nowhere. I'm fisher folk. I love fishing. It's about making sure that we're actually all pushing together to get the outcome that we're looking for. And I don't think it come from any. And in fact, I think disruption, innovation, and technology, the biggest beneficiaries are going to be isolated environments like the coast, or like Newcastle, or like Wagga Wagga, or like Adelaide, or wherever it is across the nation. Sydney and Melbourne are big cities. They're full. So how do we start to redistribute population and economic development outside of some of these mega cities? So I think, to answer your question, I think it's really about getting the information in front of people, and they'll make an educated decision about what's to be.
On that, we're going to say thank you for joining us. Peter will be back at our last segment for the evening, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this topic, and we're going to open it up to those in the audience to tweet in and help us progress the conversation.
So you're at Lunaticks Live here from the Foghorn Brewhouse in King Street. Just a note to the folks here, we've got the screen up behind us because unfortunately our Twitter wall's not cooperating with us at the moment. But we do encourage you to send in your questions via the hashtag Lunaticks, hashtag Lunaticks Live, and we'd endeavour to put them to our panel guests when we come back to have the panel discussion. But our next guest is going to be Christopher Saunders. But before that, we're going to go to an ad break.
Welcome to the Business Centre. My name's Paulina Mangano and I'm one of the business advisors here at the Business Centre. We've been doing what we do for over 34 years, and what we do is help business. Whether you're thinking of starting a business, you'd like to scale up, you'd like to go into a different direction, we're here to help. The first thing that we focus on is asking you, what is it that you want? We work out where you're at and then we help you get there. So we've got all of the tools that you need, and more importantly, we can sit with you and work out which tools are going to work best specifically for you. So there's no general template, there's no this is what you do for every business, because I think, as we all know, there's no one fit. So we work out what works for you and we're there to guide you along the way. So we'd love to see you at the Business Centre. We can help you with your business. We're not for profit, so you're our focus, and looking forward to seeing you. Thanks very much.
I'm majoring in leadership and management, and I've got a real focus on social innovation, as there's a push for businesses to be socially responsible. So 3 years ago I started a business called Eat Your Water. It's a surf brand that's come out of Newcastle, and we now sell essentially worldwide. I started it more so as a platform I could use to preach a sort of social conscience about marine conservation, thinking outside of just about profit. It's about thinking about the environment, people around you. There's a perception that starting in business is really difficult, but UON's resources and support really make it so much easier. Students from different ranges of backgrounds, and I guess bouncing those ideas off one another, it really helps when you collaborate. It just allows that process to be so much easier.
Welcome back to the Lunaticks Live here from the Foghorn Brewhouse. And Livia, joining here, thank you very much. It's been a great evening. A fascinating conversation around innovation versus, or disruption versus innovation, or what, I mean, that's...
Thanks for having me, Greg. I appreciate this ongoing support.
Excellent, excellent. Joining us here is Christopher Saunders. Hello, Christopher. How are you? Disruptive. We might get you to turn on the microphone as well.
That's better, isn't it?
That's better. That's on.
Why did you turn it off? Just to put me on the spot.
That's right.
Hello.
Greg, I'd like to do the intro on Christopher Saunders, because when I was reading your bio, my favourite description of you is that Christopher Saunders is a social change initiator.
Ooh.
I don't think I've ever met someone who
So
is...
that's an SCI. You're an SCI now.
Anyway, that was beautifully written, whoever wrote it. And you were also a lecturer at the University of Newcastle in the entrepreneurship program, and was the GM for Renew Newcastle for around about 6 or 7 years. Thank you for joining us.
Well, look, thanks for having me. Delightful to be here.
You know, my first question is, what is a social change initiator?
What indeed is a social change initiator? An enabler, someone who does things with people to bring about significant cultural and social change. So thereby creating behavioural change for whole of communities, whether that is the participants who I'm working with or whether that's changing the perception of people who are impacted upon the work that I'm part of.
We often have people who are very tech focused in their career.
And I am not.
Yeah, but I think that's really
no,
great.
that's not entirely true.
That's why we've asked you to come along here tonight, because we believe that innovation can't happen without a mindset that is about change. So you've seen a lot of people be very hands-on in creating social change or inventing physical things rather than technical things. And you talk about a hands-on creative, collaborative approach when it comes to innovation. Can you talk about some of your experiences and what you've seen in your career about people coming together using kind of a vision to achieve?
Well, maybe I should talk about why I found myself in this position. And, 30 or 40 years ago, I wanted to be an actor and naively thought that I could change the world. And about 7 years into my career, I found myself on Home and Away. And I thought, my goodness, this is not really what I signed up for. This is not really quite the world-changing, life-changing thing that I, thought this could be. So I had to, rethink that, and then got involved with the establishment of an organisation called Big Heart, which is a national arts organisation now, well known, that was working with culture and narrative at a grassroots level. And the idea was to bring stories that weren't known in the most marginalised communities to the mainstream, to bring about some sort of semblance of change. And I think that's how I found my way into this space. So coming to Newcastle 7 years ago and having the opportunity to work in an urban renewal context, again with culture, seemed to me to fit that idea that we could adapt those sort of same principles of narrative and story to bringing about change in a community. The hands-on part, it's funny, isn't it? People always tell me to get my hand off it. But I think it is parenting in many ways. I think what I've been doing for a long time is parenting, and well before I had a child, I think there were many people that I worked with, and I felt this is really probably what parenting is like, and is. It's about holding someone's hand and encouraging them to do it. I haven't got the ideas; they've got the ideas. But often people, particularly creative people and artists, come from a place of doubt, enormous doubt, and I think the role, what is needed, is to encourage people to get over that hurdle of doubt. So that's the hands-on enabling aspect.
Oh, that's a really interesting way to look at it.
Good.
But you're just coming back to, you are a technical because you have a background or pursued carpentry.
In carpentry?
Yeah.
Well,
and I'm just thinking, because you were also involved with the Regal, the rebirthing of the Regal cinema, and bringing that into fruition, which also came from very much a place of, one, disruption, in that the type of technologies that were there before and the way that films were presented and so forth had to be changed. But there were other things happening, requirements around access and who could gain access to it. And then you sort of played an instrumental role in sort of taking the shell of what used to be the Regal and then transforming it and rebirthing it.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because I would never have equated that with being technical. I would have said that the carpentry side of things, which has been a part of my life for a long time, is an artisanal thing. It's a hands-on creative thing. And yes, of course, there's technology in that. But I've never sort of made that connection. Yes, when we did the Regal, it was moving from a 35mm projection into the digital age, which I knew very little about. And still don't, really. I think, one of the things that Pete was saying before about being, growing up on a farm and being able to do a lot of things. I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. I reached a point some years ago around technology where I was working with some filmmakers with narrative, and I decided that I wouldn't fill my brain with any more technical know-how. This was around about editing at the time, film editing. I thought, I don't know that I've got the capacity for that. I should let somebody else do that. Because sometimes, and this is the collaboration side of things, one of my strengths, I think, is to delegate. I'm not interested in building empires. I'm not interested in being, the grand poobah. I'm much more interested, if someone says to me, I'd like to do that, and that's part of my job, I'll say, great, you do this, because then I'll go and do that. And I think that is, well, certainly an approach I've had for a while, this notion of making myself redundant, because there's something else I want to do. Not necessarily masterfully, but to find out how that works. And that's a big driver for me. So, yeah, I guess when I hear the tech stuff, I kind of go, ooh, there's seemingly a lot more knowledge perhaps involved with that. And I'm not so great at that. I farm out all the social media stuff to somebody else who's good at that, because I'm not. Well, I'm probably fine about it, but it's not my thing.
But I guess the reason we've sort of come working on this theme, disruption versus innovation, and because the Lunaticks comes from that space, I guess, perceived around technology and so forth. But effectively, the Lunaticks, and even now, I guess going back to where the Lunatic Society of Birmingham came from, was about exploring ideas and change. And I think that's why it was really important to have this conversation, because I think one of the things in the whole space around technology is that it becomes the centre. But in fact, what we're really effectively looking at is how people behave in the space they are at, and what is happening to them with the emerging technology, and how they choose to use it. I mean, I'm just thinking about the way we accumulate data, and we so freely give up that data so we can access a whole range of different platforms. Now we're discovering there's a huge downside to that. And I think at this stage, part of the conversation I think this, basically we all need in society to have is that whatever we're doing in some form or another, there is going to be disruption, but there is innovation. But the sky is not necessarily going to fall in. And this is the thing I guess we're trying to tease out here. So from your perspective, coming, say, to Renew Newcastle, at the core of it, Marcus Westbury saw a city that in the inner city area was basically rental spaces that were becoming abandoned, and it just got somebody thinking. Somebody came in and thought, well, how can we reconceive this space? And then effectively out of that came Renew Newcastle, and that's actually born a whole tradition.
I think it's probably fair to say it was more opportunistic than that. I think it really was, and Marcus would agree with this, it wasn't preconceived that this would be an urban development project. It was, there are artists who require space, and there is empty space. Let's match those two together and find a way to do that. And all the other things that happened as a result of that were happy accidents that we then, explored, and that's where the disruption came about. But it wasn't the disruption wasn't the purpose. That's what flowed on. And I think that from a creative perspective, well, certainly from my perspective, I think that is what I look for. So I don't necessarily know what the outcome will be. I think it's about doing something rather than talking about doing something. And we're great in this country about talking about what we're going to do. And I would always say, well, let's just do it. And I think that's what Renew did. It said, well, let's do it, let's try it and see where it goes, and then follow those pathways that open up as a result. And that, to me, is the innovative and disruptive path that opens up, to use those two words in the one sentence.
You're now taking your experience from seeing so many people innovate and disrupt in their own industry, and you've this is an assumption. I'm guessing you've seen a lot of people start things and fail, and I imagine you've also seen a lot of people start things and really succeed.
And I've seen a lot of people start things thinking they're going to do something and it ends up being something completely different. And that's exciting.
Yeah. So with your new role, lecturing at the university, specifically for those interested in entrepreneurship, where are you going? Like, how are you enabling potential enablers?
Look, are people interested in entrepreneurship? I'm not sure. I think they need to be, because I think that's the world we're living in culturally. You know, culture is no longer funded. It's not. This city doesn't really have a cultural policy, if I can say that. I think it's fair to say that. In order to survive as a creative, there isn't a job that someone's going to give you. You're going to need to create your own job. That's where the entrepreneurship comes. So my role, I think, is to say, it's not just a matter of art for art's sake. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want to make a living from this, you're going to need to open that up a lot more than that and find your own pathways for a career. So that is what I'm trying to teach. And it's what's interesting about working with third-year university students is there's a freshness and there's not a cynicism that is perhaps in, you know, some of us middle-aged people who've been doing this stuff for a while. And I think there's an opportunity to change the way people think about what their future could be and how they may fit in the bigger picture of the world. But within that, I think what is really important is the social change aspect, and who are you, why are you doing what you're doing, and how you're going to do that. What impact is your work going to make for the greater good?
And when you ask that question, are you seeing like a mindset in people, and is it dumb luck? Is it, yes. Or is it perseverance?
I'm seeing blank faces sometimes, but I'm also seeing people who go, "This is, you know, oh, this is fantastic. I never thought about that before." So what I'm really enjoying in that space is the discussions that we have, particularly in tutorials, where people say things like, "Well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to need to have a business degree to do all that." And I said, "No, you won't. But you need," and it's just seeing those moments where people realise that they need to think in a much bigger picture than in this sort of, this is what I do, I'm an artist. Yeah?
Yeah. Chris, thank you for your time. We're going to call you back after the break, and we're going to talk with Peter, and we're going to delve to the depths of disruption and innovation.
And is it a codependency? That's a question I like to know, because I think effectively what comes first? Is it the innovation, then the disruption? Because effectively some of the things I've been involved with do come first in that case. But
I was going to say that disruption is a measurement of innovation in some ways, but you know, it's a way of measuring the impact of innovation.
Okay, so you're here at the Lunaticks live from the Foghorn Brewhouse. It's quite busy out there. How's everyone hearing the audio, folks? We all can hear it? All great? Excellent. At the back there. So we're going to bring Peter up to the table here and have our panel discussion.
I believe we're not going to go to an ad break.
No.
Okay. Well, we'll just keep rolling
I can
with
see,
it.
and our great team over there from Bar TV are doing a fantastic job here.
We could do an ad break as if we're doing an ad for the Foghorn.
That's right. So why don't I give you this microphone, Christopher? And Peter, if you grab that one, mate. Thank you. And Olivia or I will play tag team.
Guys, do feel free to keep tweeting in, #LunaticsLive. We do have some handwritten tweets, which is the
technology
3D version of technology. So
that's my
quite
kind
sure
of tech.
Who the each question is from, so you will know it if you read your question, and you can let us know on Twitter that we failed to say your name. But thank you so much for tweeting in. Greg, you can go first.
No, sure. So this is for both you gentlemen. So what do you think will be commonplace first? Cars with no one behind a wheel, or cities going carbon zero? So, and it doesn't say who, but I'll put it out to you gentlemen. So what do you think will be commonplace first? cars with no one behind a wheel, or cities going carbon zero or carbon neutral?
Oh, can I have a crack at this?
You better have a crack at this. Yeah.
I think it's the latter. I think we are still some time away from autonomous vehicles in the public realm. I think there's still a bit of work to do.
Yet we're really close to being carbon neutral in cities, aren't we?
Well, Adelaide was. No, it's an interesting question. Let's toss a coin.
I think Foghorn is carbon neutral, isn't it? Isn't that what it says down the back there?
All right. Thanks for having a crack. This next question is for you, Christopher.
Good.
If the creative economy is to continue benefiting society, does it require the politics of public and private sectors to align with consumer interests?
What does that mean?
It means who's going to make money out of ideas, and do we need to have policy to help either public or private sector?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Good. Well, Chris is going to expand on the yes.
Well, is that a question about investment? And if it is, then I think yes, it does require investment. And I think we are talking culturally, and I think culture is what defines who we are as a nation. So we talk too much about economics, I think. I think the cultural economy is equally important to the economic economy, because I think it aligns with well-being and social inclusion. So if that is a question about aligning and value, then yeah, I think it's very important. Have I answered the question there? Or was
No.
I just waffled? I just waffled, haven't I?
You did very well.
Yeah.
No, I think it is a challenging one, because then it's the bringing of two tensions, creative and economy, together. And I think that's where we run into issues there. But I think it was a good effort. But Peter, this is one for you, my friend. Now, this is the problem with Twitter expanding the number of characters you can use. This is completely unfair. Okay, so bear with me. So everyone, listen in. If innovation is the creation of something new, disruption is the creation of something new that displaces the old. Now, with that in mind, what's the most exciting thing in your view as you look ahead to all the smart city technology changes promise to disrupt cities in the years ahead?
I've got a really strong view about this, and I think it's about choice, and I think it's about smart city, and smart city technology is about the production of data and turning that data into insights and information and giving it back to people, and using governments to actually apply a level of trust to that information so people can make their own choice is, I think, the most exciting thing that can come out of disruptive smart city technology. So I love the idea of people being able to choose their own destiny as they go through a city and make a choice if their child has asthma and they need to keep away from microclimates that have high pollen counts, or they want to make a choice about where to go for dinner, or what the public transport's doing. It's really, the most exciting thing for me is really about government getting out of the way and giving information back to people as in the form of an insight, so people can make more and more effective decisions.
All right.
I thought that was a terrific answer.
Chris, do you want to add?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. But I think I think that idea of governments getting out of the way is very important across the board.
That's a lovely segue comment to our next question. What is the impact of disruption and innovation on the local creative economy, if there is one?
what is the
impact of disruption?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think it's questions for the room to answer in a way, because I don't necessarily have the answers to that.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough question.
It's a tough question. Because you're asking to sort of measure the impact of. I mean, I think it's evident by so much of what we've talked about tonight. And yes, I guess you can measure that, but I'm not sure how to answer that in terms of, to quantify that in any particular way. Or, I haven't got a verbal answer for that.
Peter, have you, maybe not in the creative economy, but you have seen the results of disruption with the use of technology from your work. Could you maybe give us some insight on this idea about the positives of innovation and how that has rolled out in an economical sense?
Yeah, look, absolutely, 10 Gig Adelaide was transformational in the way that it impacted South Australia's economy, and it is measurable. It is, incentives in the commercial market moving from in the 40s to in the 20s. The vacancy rate in C and D grade buildings, being moved away. There's huge uplift in those sorts of commercials. So there's huge impacts that we're seeing, with disruption and with technology actually enabling new economies, and seeing the influx of businesses that are actually coming for those disruptions or for those innovations. So they're actually choosing locations that have infrastructure that can actually support their business. So absolutely, see a lot of that.
Great. I think we have time for one last question, and we have the Twitter feed up live. So, Greg, I'll hand over to you.
So, question for Peter. How supportive has the management, the mayor, the councillors been with smart cities? And was the change led by top down? And this is in regards, I think they were talking to Adelaide specifically. And I think we did address it, but if you could just like to repeat what you did
sure.
say.
Look, absolutely massively supportive of the idea of changing the way that Adelaide positioned itself internationally, and we needed to. There wasn't like there was an option, and it became a commercial decision at the end of it, but there were two main projects. There was our Smart City program of work, and there was 10 Gig Adelaide, and the Smart City program of work had a palpable impact on the way that people interacted with the city and how businesses could think about setting up in the city. The Open Insights platform that was built on effectively taking open data and putting it on steroids. So creating an open data toolkit that anyone could access anywhere in the world, gave businesses the ability to see the economic conditions to set up their business. So when you start to give that information to management, elected members, the mayor, our mayor at the time came from very much an entrepreneurial background, actually started a clothing business when he was quite young and sold out when he was in his 30s or 40s, I think, and was there for the right reasons and came with that mindset. So it was really pushing the boundaries as well, but it definitely needs to have support from the top.
Greg, do you think we have time for one more?
I think so.
Okay. I'm interested in this one because they've used large brand names. With digital disruption occurring with platforms like Uber and Airbnb, do cities or councils need to redesign their planning approaches? One for you, Peter.
Oh, me? Okay. Yes is the answer. Even things like when you look at the context of autonomous vehicles, corners have an offset on the corner to actually account for people having to look around the corner. Those sort of things won't be needed anymore. So there's lots of things that we're not even thinking about yet that are going to need to be rethought. So there's all this land in cities that will be released because of traditional types of transport, and that's just one example of many. But certainly the way that we plan, and certainly some of the things that I saw, particularly in the creative industries in Adelaide, where buildings were being built and they were being built with the modern sort of type of building with lots of glass and stuff like that, and you saw someone like Rising Sun coming in and saying, we've got an old building with sandstone blocks, and it looks a bit like something out of Gotham City, and if you build us a building with lots of glass, we're going to paint it black because we want our developers to have not the light sort of disrupting the contrast of the movie. So I think there's lots of things that we need to think about. But one more thing I'll add is around the idea of carbon neutrality, and I think governments play a huge role in actually setting policy around what we need to do. There's a lot of technology that's available now that can help that cause. So there's some sort of skunk worky projects that I'm working on at the moment around grid battery storage and the way to localise energy storage, so that we can look at different ways that we can disrupt the energy market. And I think there's some policy levers that government could put in place to ensure that happens more readily.
Peter, Christopher, thank you very much. You're real champions answering those questions, and they're actually very tough. There are no clear, necessary, straightaway answers that we can off the top of our head. However, thank you very much. A round of applause for our guests tonight, Christopher Saunders and Peter Earl. And you're here at the Lunatics Live. Thank you very much, a big crew. Been fantastic to all our sponsors and help. Olivia, thank you. And
catch us on May 15. We'll be talking at the Hunter Innovation Festival in association with the Newcastle City Council with the Technology is the New Oil.
And also the Newey Awards is coming up as well. The entries can be accepted as of May 31. So coming up, go to our website, lunaticsociety.com.au, and we'll be looking forward to receiving those. Last year we had a record number come in, and it's the biggest regional recognition of innovation in Australia as it stands at the moment. So from us here at the Lunatics Live, thank you very much.
All. Good night.
Good night.